Hey guys, it's Miss Giana, and I'm going to be continuing the book that I've been reading in my past videos. It's titled Stage Fright on a Summer Night. We left off on chapter 6, so I'm just going to go ahead and get started. Alright, chapter 6, On Stage. Will led Jack and Annie through a door into the back of the Globe Theater. Then he led them up a dark stairway. As they headed upstairs, Jack heard laughter coming from the audience. His legs felt like jelly. "This way," said Will. He led Jack and Annie into a crowded, dimly lit room. Actors were rushing about everywhere. Each seemed to be in his own world. One was pulling on a cape. Another was tying a rope around his waist. A third was whispering words to himself. "I'll find your costume," said Will. As Will dug through a large basket of clothes, Jack and Annie looked around the costume room. It was crammed with fancy gowns, purple and blue capes, gold and silver wigs, stacks of hats, and masks. "Cool," whispered Annie. She touched a donkey mask and a lion mask. "These would make good disguises, huh?" Jack was amazed she was acting so calm. Didn't she know they were about to stand in front of 3,000 people? The thought made him break into a sweat. His stomach felt fluttery. "Here," said Will. He handed them green tunics, hats, and slippers. "Put these on. No time to dally. Your part's coming up soon." Here's a picture. Jack and Annie slipped behind a curtain and changed into their costumes. As they put on their hats, Annie hid her pigtails. When they came out, Will handed them each a small scroll. "Here are your roles," he said. "They have only your lines on them, no one else's." Jack unrolled his scroll. He had 2 long speeches to read. "Wait a second," he said. "I thought I just had a few lines. I didn't know I had a ton." "Don't worry," said Will. "Just remember, speak very clearly and with feeling. And above all, act natural." "Act natural?" thought Jack. "How do you act natural when you're about to have a heart attack?" Just then, a short, chubby man burst into the costume room. He had curly hair and bright red cheeks. He was dressed all in green, too. "For goodness sakes, Will," he said in a frantic whisper, "what will we do?" "Don't worry, look who I found. They both can read," said Will. He pushed Jack and Annie forward. "Jack and Andy, meet Puck, merry wanderer of the night. He'll take you to the stage. Good luck." Annie smiled. Jack groaned. "Come, boys," said Puck, "follow me." Puck led Jack and Annie out of costume room into the hallway. Then he guided them to a dark area at the back of the stage. Actors stood silently nearby waiting to go on. One wore a beautiful white gown. Others wore tattered brown rags. Through an arch, Jack saw the roof of the stage. It was blue with stars and a moon. A huge crowd stood directly in front of the stage. More people watched from the galleries above. "Every single person in England is out there," Jack thought with horror. "How did I let Annie talk me into this?" "I'll take you on stage first," Puck whispered to Jack. "When I say, 'How now, spirit, whither wander you?' Start reading your lines, understand?" Jack barely nodded. His mouth felt dry. He tried to swallow, but he couldn't. Puck turned to Annie. "You go on stage with the Fairy Queen," he whispered. He pointed to the actor dressed in the beautiful white gown. "When she tells you to sing her to sleep, you start your song." "What's the tune?" asked Annie. "Just make it up," said Puck. "Now, if they yell rude things, don't stop. Just—" "If who yells rude things?" Jack broke in. "The groundlings get a bit wild," said Puck. "Groundlings?" said Jack. "The rowdy folk who don't have seats," said Puck. "They're standing close to the stage. If they throw rotten fruit, don't stop either. Just keep going." "That does it," thought Jack. He couldn't go on stage. Not with groundlings throwing things. Not with 3,000 people watching. Not with 1,000,000 lines to read. And not when he was about to throw up. While Puck and Annie watched the show, Jack slipped away. He looked for the exit. Just as he found the stairs, he bumped into Will. "Where are you going?" Will whispered. "I can't stay," said Jack. "I'm sick." Will sucked in his breath, but then he put his hands on Jack's shoulders and spoke calmly. "Close your eyes for a moment, Jack," he said. And Jack closed his eyes. He could hear his heart pounding in his ears. "There is nothing to fear," Will whispered. "Imagine you are a fairy. You're in the forest on a summer night. See the silver moon overhead? Hear the owls? Hoo, hoo." Will Will's deep whisper seemed to cast a spell over Jack. He felt calmer, and he could picture the silver moon. He could hear the hooting of the owls. "Are you in the forest on a summer night?" asked Will. Jack nodded. "If you believe that, the audience will believe it too," whispered Will. "We're on," whispered Puck. The chubby actor ran to Jack. He grabbed his hand and pulled him along. Before he knew it, Jack was on stage. Chapter 7. In the Forest in the Night. Jack stood on stage in the bright sunlight. He felt 3,000 pairs of eyes staring at him. "How now, spirit?" Puck said in a loud voice. "Whither wander you?" Jack looked down at his scroll. He pushed his glasses into place. He opened his mouth, and no sound came out. One of the groundlings hissed. "How now, spirit?" Puck shouted even louder this time. "Whither wander you?" Jack closed his eyes. He felt the summer night. He took a deep breath, and he cleared his throat. He looked at his speech. Then he began to read. "Over hill, over dale, through bush, through briar, over park, over pale, through flood, through fire, I do wander everywhere, swifter than the moon's sphere, and I serve the fairy queen." As Jack read aloud, the audience grew quiet. Jack forgot he was Jack. He was in the forest in the night talking to Puck. When he finished, not a single groundling hissed or threw things. Jack took a deep breath as Puck started his lines. Jack knew he had one more speech. His heart pounded, but it was more from excitement now than fear. When it was time to start his second speech, he was ready. This time he spoke very clearly and with feeling. He tried to be as natural as possible. When he finished his speech, the audience clapped and clapped. Jack hardly remembered leaving the stage. Will was waiting for him. "Hurrah!" said Will, slapping Jack on the back. "You were brilliant!" Jack blushed as he gave Will his scroll back. He couldn't believe he'd just performed acted in front of all those people. And he'd actually had fun, just like Annie had said. Jack waited in the shadows for Annie to do her part. He watched her go on stage with the fairy queen and the other fairies. When the queen asked the fairies to sing her to sleep, Annie stepped forward, reading from her scroll. She sang out clearly and with lots of feelings. "You spotted snakes with double tongue, thorny hedgehogs be not seen." Annie waved her hand as if shooing away the snakes and hedgehogs. "Newts and blind worms do no wrong. Come not near our fairy queen." Annie shook her finger at the newts and blind worms. The audience howled with laughter. Annie kept singing. She made funny movements and silly faces to go with the words. She even added a little dance to her song. By the time she finished, the audience clapped and cheered and stomped their feet. "Wonderful job, Andy," Will said when Annie left the stage. "You were brilliant," Jack told her. "Thanks," said Annie. She gave her scroll back to Will. "Do I go on again?" "Not until the end, when we all bow," said Will. Just then, Jack heard the audience laughing. He really wanted to see the play, so he found a shadowy spot at the back of the theater and watched from there. Jack couldn't understand everything people said, but he could understand the story. It was about people in love, but none were able to marry the people they loved. The funniest part was about the fairy king and fairy queen. The king was mad at the queen, so he put magic juice on her eyelids to make her fall in love with the first person she saw. Puck worked for the king. He wanted to make the king's trick even funnier, so he put the head of a donkey on a funny man. When the queen woke up, she saw the donkey man. The magic made her fall madly in love with him. The fairy king finally broke the spell. Puck turned the donkey man into a human while he slept. When the man woke up, he looked about in wonder. "I have had a most rare vision," he said. "I have had a dream." Jack whispered the words to himself. "I have had a most rare vision. I have had a dream." Beside him, a group of actors gathered for the last scene of the play. "My lion mask is missing," one of them wailed. "I cannot be a lion without my mask." "Hush, of course you can," said Will. "Just roar and roar again." Will pushed the actor on stage. He wiped his brow. Then he caught sight of Jack. "Get Andy," he said. "It's almost time for our bow." Annie? Where's Annie? Jack wondered. He hadn't seen her in a while. He peeked into the costume room, and she wasn't there. Jack's heart started to pound. He had a scary thought. "Oh no," he whispered. Jack ran down the stairs. He opened the door, and he was happy to see Annie running out from some trees behind the theater. "It's time to bow," he said, grabbing her hand. "Where have you been? What did you do?" "I'll show you later," said Annie. Jack and Annie charged upstairs together. They found Will and some of the actors waiting. Puck was finishing his last speech on stage. So good night unto you all. Give me your hands if we be friends. Andy, Jack, said Will. He grabbed Annie and Jack. Puck ended his speech, and the audience gave a big hand. They clapped and whistled and shouted. Jack and Annie ran on stage with Will and the other actors. While the crowd cheered, they all bowed once, twice, and once again. Alright guys, I'm going to leave off on Chapter 8. I'll see you in my next video. Bye!